So our esteemed panelists, ladies, gentlemen, and dear students, we have some of students also attending today. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Chirag Bhandari, and I'm the founder and CEO at Innoble Social Innovations, and I'll be your host for this session. As many of you are already aware, we're doing a series of webinar on a very critical issue, which is how do we safely get students back to school and how do we mitigate the COVID impact and minimize dropout rates and learning loss and basically get education back to the normal. In line with the same discussion, the topic for today's webinar is school dropouts and how to get education back on track. And as you all know, India is amongst the few countries where schools have been closed for the longest due to COVID-19 pandemic. 1.5 years of school education is lost, and there is abundant evidence that the damage this prolonged closure has caused to the children. UNESCO has estimated that every 1 month lost of school education, the children, there's a learning loss of 2 months among students. So that way, last 18 months, students have lost not just 18 months, but about 36 months of education. Now, the good news is that schools are finally starting in most parts of our country. In some states, they would be starting in the next 2 months, and children are gradually getting reintegrated back into the system. However, in the new normal, the schools have changed, and there are some very, very new measures that the community, the parents, the teachers, the school, authorities, and the children themselves have to comply with for education to be effectively delivered. Uh, Kids are mostly happy to come back to school, more so in the case of underprivileged kids, as online education had a very limited reach. Uh, but with COVID, there are new challenges for students. Some underprivileged students have lost, their parents have lost their jobs, and they have to, they have other issues to take care of. So they would not be able to provide for basic student tools. Uh, uh, in many cases, most schools were not maintained well over the past 1.5 years. So the school's building would be, dilapidated, unwelcoming, and an unfit environment for students. So, and besides this, the overall learning loss which has happened over the past 1.5 year, to mitigate it and to get students up the curve and to be, because they were essentially jumping a class, and without not without getting much education in this space. So how do you get them to the levels, educational levels that they're required to kind of deliver on in the examinations that they would be looking forward to? So these clearly are very complex challenges, and we need to really involve all the stakeholders in these discussions while we're trying to find credible solutions. These panel discussions are planned to deliberate these issues and suggest some plausible solutions. We will be making a genuine attempt in recording all the learnings of these discussions, look at all the possible solutions, and then possibly implement these solutions in our interventions and share reports. We have a pretty good participation today. I would like to acknowledge each one of you for taking out time for being a part of this webinar. Making time and being here during the middle of the day is not easy, and it shows that you're really committed towards rural transformation, educational transformation in India, and that is something that is highly appreciated. Without further ado, I would happy to announce that on today's panel, we will be featuring a rich array of very high-level speakers. These are people who have really deep knowledge about their disciplines, and we all hope to gain a lot from the upcoming discussion. Please allow me to introduce them to you. Our first speaker is Mrs. Madhura Talegaonkar, a corporate social responsibility expert with 15 years of experience in corporate social responsibility and diversity and inclusion and volunteering. At present, she's head CSR at Bajaj Electricals Limited, where corporate social responsibility encompasses sustainability, diversity, volunteering, and uh, community investment initiatives. She has a master's degree in political science, studied law, and has passion to bring about positive change in society. She has won several accolades and awards as an individual in CSR, uh, and and also for our organization. Many of the CSR projects received recognition from the industry and the government. Uh, our second panelist for today is Mrs. Rajni Singh. After an MBA in International Business from UOW, Australia, Rajni Singh joined Tata Coffee 12 years ago and today leads the CSR plus volunteering and sustainability space. She has a keen interest in environment and believes sustainability needs to be taught to children from the very beginning for a greener future. This, by the way, is also an agenda that Ennoble is driving. She started associating with NGO right away after her early 20s as a volunteer with Dr. Jack Pager's street clinic for 18K destitute in Calcutta, mainly lepers, for 4 years as volunteers. And our third esteemed panelist is Miss Sarah Sharma. She's a young voice on this platform, and we're really looking forward to understand her views in this space. Uh, she's joined the Trident family in June 2019 after post-graduation from Punjab, and she has worked in various domains in HR and Trident itself, and currently is working as an executive director of Trident Foundation, an independent CSR implementation agency of Trident Group. Along with the work profile, Sarah is currently also the chairperson of local government ITI of Barnala. And lastly, as we always do, I would like to introduce to someone very special to the entire Ennoble team. He's one of our mentors, Mr. Prasun Kumar. He is an educational, he's an educationalist professional and has an educational background as an MA in political science and sociology. He's an eminent educational advisor working with Vidyavan Society and has close to 23 years of experience in diverse educational roles. He's closely associated with various state and national school educational improvement programs, including textbook writing, teacher training, and policy and curriculum development. Mr. Prasoon is the one who has conceptualized this idea of having various stakeholders in education come together to discuss these complex issues on one platform, and we are highly thankful to him. And before we move forward, I would quickly like to give you a small introduction of Ennoble as to what we do and uh, why are we so passionate and interested about education. So just to give you a sense, Ennoble is an organization which is working in the education transformation space, where we are looking to transform schools at scale holistically with quality education, with infrastructure, and also in terms of sustainability. Uh, we have devised a back to school campaign where we are looking to transform schools which are in dilapidated state right now. So to give you a background, we are, when we look at a school, we look at four components. We look at infrastructure, and we have devised all products and services where we can transform schools in terms of infrastructure, and we do all elements of infrastructure. When we look at quality education, we look at engaging education at scale for all students. And here we deliver in alignment with the objectives of NEP 2020, engaging education for students. And then we look at sustainability. While this education, while we are providing new products, while we're providing engaging education, it is really important for students to be aligned with sustainability at a very early age, because it's a massive challenge that entire humanity is facing. And finally, in these times, we are looking at connecting students back to education, how we can look at reducing dropouts, how we can look at reducing uh, you know, the dropout rates. And in that line, we have this back to school campaign where we're looking at the current scenario of Indian schools, and we're looking at how we can make these schools exciting spaces. So very, very simple plan that we've created, wherein we're looking at beautification of schools, and we're also looking at providing basic tools in the yellow green school bag to students so that their education is facilitated and they're excited to be in the school. Uh, Here, I mean, to give you a sense about the campaign, we're looking at overall school beautification and we're looking at wall murals. Uh, the purpose is to make school exciting environment for students, to inspire them, to get their creativity out, to create positivity. Uh, and it's really important for the personal and academic development of students. Uh, Elements are very simple. We transform various elements of the school. So we look at what are the different elements in the infrastructure, boundary, master wall, etc., and we transform all these elements. Uh, so, for example, this is how we look at transforming the boundary walls of a school, like giving it a very vibrant look, at the same time very inspirational look, by talking about various inspirational personalities. And then there are various themes on which these walls are made. This is one such theme. um, and then creating a central wall in the school so that people, I mean, this wall is also reflective of environment, of culture, of sports, of play, so that students are connected to this one space in the school. uh, and then, looking at creating playscapes in the school, uh, and taking different elements in the Indian culture also in these walls. Toilets are one spaces which are generally not really in good shape in the school, so designing toilets, and again we've designed it in such a way that we can transform schools at scale across different states. So all the designs are iteratively, and we apply state relevant elements to these designs so that we can scale them across different states. uh, and then obviously we Bala, building as learning aid. So we use a lot of Bala, especially on floor graffitis where students can play and have fun and learn in the process. Uh, and then some of the past work that we've done, we've had a partnership with Mahindra where we transformed schools in Rajasthan. And this is one of my favorite paintings. It is just right there in front of the school gate. You enter and you see this big wall. So this is how we painted it. Uh, uh, Project with Godrej in Mahad, Maharashtra, where we transformed this school and made it into a very exciting space. Just to give you a comparison on before and after intervention. So the entire school space got completely transformed. Uh, so yeah, so this is like a brief introduction to what we do. And without further ado, I would like to call upon our mentor, Mr. Prasoon Kumar, and maybe he can share his thoughts and create the context for this discussion. Mr. Prasoon Kumar.
Yeah, thank you, Chirag. So let me take all the audience through all the four webinars that we had and what we learned from it. So, and we started discussing the webinar on the general idea of the impact of COVID on school and children's learning. Then we looked into specific subjects, language, maths, and science. And generally, we felt the need to, based on all the observations, all the webinar presentation that we had, generally we feel that we need to take a holistic view on learning, taking pandemic as providing us with a window to know why we failed and what we should be doing to deal with such failures in future. There is a long story behind my observation. I tried to abstract four important points, particularly for this webinar, to give you an idea that what we did in the four webinar we had before this. So there are 4 points, and I'll just try to cover it as soon as possible. See, because of pandemic, we all know many students, many family has undergone economic depression. There is a serious problem of income. Many families are suffering from, particularly those at the margins. So children's social and economic background is partly responsible for how they respond to learning. This we should keep in mind. Those from marginal background compared to better income bracket family. So if I consider myself as a one post for being a little better off than others. So they, if a child is from a very from a background where they have to struggle for survival, they will, there is a possibility that they will not take the long term view of education and learning. We have to keep that in mind, as survival instinct is more prominent in children from families that depend on limited resources. They suspect outsiders. They also suspect outsiders. We are all outsider in a school, particularly when we are not teacher. None of us, I don't know about audience, but none in the panel, including me, we are not a teacher. So we are an outsider. We need to understand that. And there is lots of suspicion of, around such kind of outsiders, particularly for children coming from marginalized family. And I can recommend one book. Bruner has written a book on economic background of children and their learning. His book is called Poverty and Children, and we should all read that book. It's one of the fantastic book on and hopefully we all know that Bruner is recognized and well-known educationist worldwide. Second point is that we have to understand that not all learnings are empowerment. Knowing itself is painful, and one gets to know what is not known is very, very painful. If somebody walks in your class and tells you that, no, you don't know this, you don't know this, and that's what learning is, education is all about. It is not so easy. It is not empowering always. It's also it also is at times very painful. So we have to keep that in mind as a teacher, as somebody who's talking to teacher. Third is that, learning differs from between individuals. Therefore, a teacher must take into account the following. I have 6 points. I've listed 6 points just to convey my message clearly. One is, that each learner has their own self-image, and that is a great factor in learning. Then there are learners' personal expectation. We all know we learn something because of some part of our learning is also because of personal expectation. We expect something from that learning. Then we also learn because others expect from us. So whether it's teacher, parents, peers, and then there are school and classroom environment that impact your learning. That then there is a curriculum which is at times culturally skewed. We have to be very careful about it. And in Indian context, sixth, which is more important, is that you have most of the time you have teachers from middle class background, and children, difference between children background, particularly in government school, and the teacher's background is huge. So you have to take that into account when trying to teach children. Fourth point that I want to elaborate is that there is no universal motivation to inspire learning. So there are different categories of, Scott Blumen has identified 4 categories for how we get motivated or students get motivated to read. So let me just read it for you all. One is intrinsic motivation, which arises from interest in the activity itself. Then there are social motivation, where the task or the activity valued in the context of pleasing other people. The third is achievement motivation, in which a person wishes to do well at the task in order to compete with others. Instrumental motivation, where motivation is brought about by rewards and punishment which are extrinsic to the task, which Skinner talked about. So these are the 4 points I would like to highlight. And when we go to school, when we are now trying to go back and normalize everything in the school. So these are 4 points I have abstracted from my own experience of talking to teachers within our school and outside our school, and also talking to people who understand education better than me. Thank you, Chirag. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Prasun sir. And with that, I would like to invite our first panelist officially, Mrs. Madhura Talegaonkar, if she can share her views on this. Welcome, Madhura.
Thanks, Chirag, and for this invitation, and thanks, Prasunji, for setting up the momentum for this meeting. I would like to talk about the next couple of minutes where how Bajaj Electricals is associated with education. Bajaj Electricals is a part of the Bajaj Group. Like Chirag mentioned earlier, we have these very strong pillars in CSR where we talk about sustainability, we talk about diversity and inclusion, we talk about investing in the community, and then we talk about the employee volunteering initiatives. In the space where we want to invest in the communities that we work with or are around or in vicinity or the communities that we like to engage with, the core areas of intervention are basically education, environment, promoting arts and culture. And in the environment, we largely focus on renewable energy, waste management. In education, we have a very interesting program which developed largely through the initiatives of the employees. In Bajaj Electrical specifically, we are very strongly concerned with how each one of us is individually responsible. We take the responsibility collectively as a department, and then as a corporate, what kind of commitments do we take? Each member of the Bajaj family has a very, very strong focus on committing themselves to the cause of the nation. We are known as the nation builders. And Mr. Shekhar Bajaj, Mrs. Kiran Bajaj lead their own foundations. At the same time, also take very strong interest in how we perform ourselves. And we also a little more, like I call it a Gandhian, is that any program, any intervention, anything that we want to work on with the community, we ensure that as employees, we work upon it on ourselves. For example, if we want to work on waste management projects, we will ensure that the factories have waste management sites prepared. The employees are trained to be working on waste management at homes or initiate these activities at their housing colonies or societies. So this education space was primarily dictated by because our passion was more on environment and promoting arts and culture, but it came through the genius of our employees who were very keen to volunteer for the children. I think the most pleasurable thing to volunteer is a space where you can actually have a human to human connect, and you can actually help contribute or give back. Like if you see most of the time, whether it's the teachers or the parents, you like to give what you have not had in the past. So a lot of our passionate employee volunteers wanted to work with children, with schools, and we are spread across the country. We have special engineering projects. We are working in the remotest of the areas where we are promoting, electricity, or we are, working with the appliances for Pan India. So all of these people actually came across with saying that no, we would like to volunteer with children. We would like to volunteer with schools, and so we just sat a little bit, because we have a small committee who works on these kind of different works that we work on, and we started this program called as Bridge the Gap, because the employees were volunteering very specifically, and then our focus is largely on primary and secondary schools. So we have recently started working with Anganwadis, but largely on primary and secondary schools, and not education higher than that. And the primary connect that we thought was a lot of programs were being run by the government, very interesting, and some of them had taken fruition, like your midday meal program as a success, or some large-scale organizations or non-profits were running programs. Like say, for example, Pratham was running program on education, working on lagging behind children. But there were very specific needs, of the schools that we were wanting to volunteer with, which were not being catered to. So, for example, they really needed something as basic as understanding how to manage the finances, to how to improve the school's infrastructure, to get funding to do the same, or to ensure that there is some, corporates earlier, I would not say that they do it now, would just dump a lot of IT material on the schools, and they would not know what to do with it. Even to have your, computer system set up, to do a LAN, to do an annual maintenance contract, is something where you need to give the technical know-how, the knowledge, the funding for that, and that would not happen. And we have seen actually classrooms and classrooms stuffed with material and not knowing how to use it. Or there were schools, so there were different levels of schools who were not having material, but having material, not knowing how to use it. So all kinds. So we decided to have a program. We even titled it as Bridge the Gap. Specifically because the employee, so we've also wanted to bridge the gap between employee volunteering and CSR funding. We also wanted to bridge the gap between what the expectations of the schools were and what we could deliver. We also wanted to bridge the gap between the communities, the parents, and the schools, and what we would work on. We don't largely depend on jargon. We make our programs title also very, very simple and very, very understandable. So like, we would name our programs also very simple. We also trained our employees, of course, with the education partners and the non-profit organizations who were implementing. Some of the projects we implemented directly through our own foundation, which is the Bajaj Electricals Foundation, but some with very, very, established partners in the field. So we trained our employees who were pan-India on basically working on assessing schools. How do you survey a school? How do you identify a need? So needs were basically very simple. Many of us who are from the development sector background would know that, but we simplified further because we have to cater to the most common, denominator. So what is your immediate requirement or immediate need, and what's your strategic need? So unless you, plug in your immediate needs, it's very easy to humor somebody who comes from outside and says, or they come up with saying that humko ye 50 cheezein chahiye, or they genuinely try to say something that they want, and the agency is not able to deliver the requirements. So this was exactly a bridge the gap kind of a concept. So we would actually work with schools, we would volunteer with our time, we would invest, in filling up the forms, in a participatory manner, look at the requirements, build a long-term relationship, with the school, and of course, do it gradually till we understand the culture working of the, teachers, principal, staff, the community, and those who were engaged in. And ideally, we would work about 1 to 3 years. So this would basically mean, one is, of course, I think largely what even Chirag shared was making the school attractive for the children to be there. See, every time when we talk about school, it's not something so heavy or so, we all have our own escape, as children. Why would we want to go to school? Assuming we had a school which was good. We would like to go to a school because school is a safe haven. And school is something which gives you more than academics. School is something which you want to go, you want to be, you want to play, you want to learn, you want to engage with friends. For in rural communities, there are no washrooms at home. You're actually coming for your midday meal program. You're coming to use the washroom. You're coming to for various things. There have been simple programs where a sanitary vending machine or a dispenser has actually, even a dispensing, not just a vending machine, has actually increased the number of children coming in or girl childs coming into the schools. And these were the kinds of feedbacks or whatever that we got from the school that we were engaged in with the partners that we were working in. So we started identifying these schools through an elaborate process. Schools would come up either through partner organizations, we would directly fund through the CSR interventions, or through employees who were spread across thin, some in the remotest interiors, wherever projects were put in, be it UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, or it would be like in the north or Ladakh. And of course, one of our, Mr. Shekhar Bajaj's late son, Anand Bajaj, he was extremely passionate about being very inclusive in geographies. So he was like, let's move to the Northeast, let's move to Ladakh. And it's very difficult, let me tell you, to run programs which are thin, okay? It makes very cozy proposition to have a project which is located in one location, put in all your money, showing the impact. But if you're going to be working, with your limited amount of funding that you have, to create demonstrable projects which are across. So today I have a project in Ladakh, I have a project in the Northeast, I have a project, where I have to showcase what is the kind of effort that goes into transforming schools, connecting, the employees, volunteering time. It's very, very interesting. So this was how we were going on. We were going very well. And then, of course, our huge emphasis on the volunteering offline, or what we call now online and offline, where we believe strongly that you would have to volunteer with your time also, maybe with your resources if you have it, but more so with your qualitative time and the inputs that you can give for these schools. The biggest challenge for us happened was when COVID struck. Okay, since the topic of the discussion is also on COVID, because ours is not an IT company, or an investment bank where most of the employees are sitting in a location, are used to doing sessions online or webinars or tutoring or training. And then this whole transition, when it happened, where this, of course, first few months was a complete blank out for us. And then we started realizing that it's going to be extremely difficult to work with the communities. So our first point of intervention was when these partners came back, when they could go back to the field, was to actually come up with some relief material. So some of these communities who were migrant workers or whatever were actually provided, where the children were studying, were provided with material that could sustain them for a couple of months, so that they could actually be at home. And then we started a campaign to collect your, digital gadgets. The company had to, tweak its policies to donate laptops, because the e-waste rules are very stringent. So when we had to actually look at, to give an office laptop to a non, profit organization, the end of the life cycle the legal, the e-waste rules all have to be just the policy of the organization needs to be modified to get this done. But nevertheless, we started looking at collecting these, smartphones or laptops from the company to then actually clear them out, format them, put in the software, which would then be owned by the people who would be taking it. And of course, they were given to people who had some potential, because we had to put in some filter as to who could be, giving these kind of, because there's always a deficit in resources, and the needs are more. So we had to put in some filters as to which of the students or which of the teachers would get these assets. And then, of course, that was the job of the nonprofit organizations. And slowly, as everybody started getting a foothold into their own lives, we started these online programs called with organizations. They're known as Read a Story. Also with the same organizations, we started tutoring the children who were going to be appearing for boards. And I would be very happy to tell you that the data, the amount of volunteering, 800 employees volunteered in the last year, 2021. And so for approximately 500 employees, I have volunteered on 3 of these programs, which I'm talking about, which is the Connect. One is the, reading a story, so that you actually having a connect with the community in some form or the other. One is your academics, the other is your imagination. Like I said, when we were working on improvising the infrastructure of the schools, we were not just focusing on academics, which is one part of it, but like your wash, your physical infrastructure. We were actually, even like say, if it's a school in Maharashtra, a lot of them do lay gym and they do the dance. And so having that small equipment given to them so that the teachers were good enough to train them. They would, the easiest thing in sports, I will tell you, through our experience, was to put up, do the platforms for kabaddi or kho-kho. So just get some equipment, roll up the platform, put up the kabaddi poles, mark up the grounds, and start teaching them, training them on sports across some schools. We had a very beautiful program with one of our partner firms, Hercules Hoist, where we actually ran this program for the tribal children for 3 years on basically enhancing the sports culture, sports talent, and sports physical infrastructure in schools. So we focused that with that particular company. But coming back to this COVID, we did that. We started then connecting with the communities through which we were already working on online. And like I said, 500 employees have volunteered this year. Last year it was 800 plus across, and of course committing great number of hours. Almost 100 plus sessions have been conducted, and great number of hours have also been volunteered. Now, apart from that, we've also given a small grant or support through a partner organization to work with families of children, school-going children, who have had a loss of income or earning parents or senior members in their household. So it's like a sustenance grant for the next couple of years, so that they can then transition smoothly and also be co-opted with the other programs of the government, of the non-government, and then get back to school. So for me, I mean, Chirag can ask me a lot of questions later on, and I'm open to take questions also. But I think the biggest part is now that the children are going back to school, 18 months is a loss, no doubt. But when you look at it, in the lifespan of a human being, it doesn't matter much. Right now, it looks like every day probably was more excruciating for us who have been through, this horrendous COVID experience. So 18 months will not be very long in the lifespan of all of us. But right now, when the children are coming back to school, there has been a loss of education, no doubt about it. But how do you ensure that you retain them being in school? That they don't lose the interest eventually and not come back to school, right? The value of trying to be in school, it will all come back to normalcy in some form or the other. Yes, it's a loss, but the fact that the communities who are marginalized will be impoverished to an extent, who are basically living on daily wages. So how do you ensure that you keep that sustenance going so that there is no dropout is more important right now. This 1.5 years will be covered up. There are a lot of good organizations, who committed. I think one of the most beautiful parts, if you'll remember, exactly 15 months back, the kind of funding that even the corporate came out with, to support, because it was such an unknown dark area. was humongous and stupendous. The fact that every penny matters and counts and should go back to the community, and the community we should ensure, as a civil society, that the dropout rates henceforth are not that bad. And one more point I would like to make is technology should not be very complicated for the rural areas. Too much of development, too much of this online tool, that tool. Keep it very simple where education is concerned. Online tools, exercises are concerned for the schools and communities, but yet as a part of the disaster mitigation or a preparation plan for any eventuality that may happen in the future, we must keep continuing this technology transfers, this some kind of ensuring that your principals of the schools, teachers, communities are able to function remotely if required in the future. So this kind of a connect or whatever should not be lost in the coming years, so that we are prepared for any eventualities. Yeah, Chirag, over to you.
Thanks, Madhura. Thanks for a detailed account of what you have been doing. I think very, very inspiring to understand that you are actually taking on schools across. I mean, these are border issues in Ladakh and in Northeast. Not too many people are doing this kind of stupendous work. And I think this one idea of having employees volunteer and getting them to do things, and that's how build their habit and then drive a certain culture. I think it's just phenomenal. I think this is something that probably Gandhiji used to talk about, but this is actually phenomenal. So great to know about this incredible work. And I'll come back to you with a few set of questions during the course of the session. I would now like to introduce. Thanks, Madhura. I would now like to introduce our second speaker for today. As I've already introduced her, but I would like to invite her to share her views on this topic. Rajni, over to you.
Thank you. I would just like to have Prasun, the other speakers and the other listeners to just think about one word that comes into our mind when we talk about the word teach. We'll start with you, Chirag. One word that comes in mind when we talk about the word teach. Anybody can volunteer. Chirag, if you need a minute. One word. Avni, one word. Prasun, Madhura, anybody.
Yeah, so teach is also, it reminds me of teacher.
Okay.
You need to have a teacher here.
Anybody else from the participant? One word that comes into our mind when we think about the word teach.
Learning. Learning is coming to my mind. Teach is learning.
Anybody else? You can write it in the chat box.
Exploration.
Brilliant. Anybody else?
A lot of replies in the chat: knowledge, learn, sharing, give, education, guide, share information, teaching, to educate,
Empower.
Empower.
Brilliant. These are all brilliant words. And one word that comes in your mind when we say student. Gopal, Prasun sir, anybody? Future, learner, school. Anybody else? One word that comes into your mind when you talk about student.
Yeah, so one thing which Rajniji, one thing that comes to my mind is when you are a student, you only have to obey.
You only have?
To obey, take orders.
Brilliant. Enthusiastic, happy faces, curiosity, potential. Somebody said change makers. Change makers. Brilliant. So I will show you this book that I picked up. Can everybody see this book?
Yes.
It's a book printed by this famous woman in UK. And we all have gone through storybooks, and this storybook does nothing. It just talks about, it shows a child how to peep and to use his imagination to find the unicorn. So the birds will say, I can see your horn. Then they will say, I can see your tail. And they're using the imagination till they find the unicorn. Now, this storybook tells us about how beautifully you can get the viewer to participate with you, to engage with you, and get the, those movies that are made these days, where they ask you for a choice. Do you want to go by A ending or B ending? They give you a situation and you choose. So when we went on the field, and we learned from Tata Steel, because they are pioneers with 4,600 schools. And we learned, and being in Tatas is very easy to learn from each other. And when we went, we were all very nervous about the poverty that was increasing in the COVID times, and also the resources that the government's rural schools were faced with challenges of very limited resources, and health was a big concern. So this is what we found, that we have 33 locations, and we found that this was something that was really concerning, and people were losing sleep over. And then what we decided to do is work with that. I don't know, I've not used Zoom before. I'm going to try and share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
So we started something for Yoga Bunny. We started creating characters to get them to school. These were characters built only for Tata Coffee. And we started doing 1 minute yoga. 1 minute yoga asanas, sorry about that. 1 minute yoga asanas, which we started projecting and telecasting in the local channels. And this is how we created some kind of a branding, where children were now in local places associating with this kind of fun. There's something new, there's something fun that's going to happen, at school. So then, keeping that in mind, first, health was a concern. We got parents and the students getting involved in 30 asanas for 30 minutes, 1 minute, one asana. They were easy asanas to push in WhatsApp also. And then what happened was, we started, I'll just show you something that I wanted to show you. We realized that we also started speaking to the teachers, and we realized that we don't have a saturation model, which means that, is there a model where we can look into age specific? That was one concern, that we find age appropriate learning. A rural school and an urban school, a Harry Potter can be read by X standard of child, but the rural schools were suffering. So that's the first thing we realized. And we realized we have to strengthen the children. How do we strengthen the children? How to strengthen the teachers. So we started doing a series of workshops to make teachers understand that you are an integral part of the magic. The magic is you, and you are accountable to the parents, and how you can gain respect. So we took them through that process of them feeling good, them seeing that because they're changing their strategy of getting into activity-based, diverse activity-based learning, how they were getting more passive, and the students were getting more self-governed. They were learning other things like time management. So once they started feeling that the teachers, in the lockdown, their visit, like simple example, like do a map of your village, giving them diverse learning tasks integrated with multiple subjects was what we had to have one orientation class during the lockdown with the teachers and one mid-course thing, and once a week the activities were being uploaded. Drawing became a very big thing, and an exciting thing became internet. So all of this put together, getting children to not lose connect during the lockdown. What insects did you see? It became more live, more outdoor. Go and interview your shopkeeper or your farmer or your farm. And that's how we came to self-directed learners. They used to say, today I have a recipe of this, or I have a recipe. The teachers during the lockdown started getting excited about this kind of a connect. They were feeling this connect with the students. Then to help them, what we did was we developed sessions for them, simple things like the basic need from the principal was they don't have a platform where they feel safe and to practice. So we called our project Abhyas, which means practice. Give them enough opportunity in a classroom to practice. So we went ahead and gave them syllabus like today you teach scenarios which are only what, where, why, sentence formation, who, when. So we gave them a detailed syllabus and we gave them a deployment dashboard also, which was helpful for the principal and the teachers. So we started empowering the teachers to empower their students. So this is what the expectations set for this hour. And they had it, communicating it to their students also helped. That this is what we expect to learn. Magic words, sorry, thank you, please. And this was then showcased to the stakeholders, the sarpanch, the parents. The parents, when they saw the children improving, life became easy for us. That is what we decided that this is not going to work unless we look into making the teachers feel they're gaining respect. They are more accountable directly to the parents, and it's more self-driven and an element of fun when we introduce stories. How learning was accessible, was the learning taking place? Governance became a big part, helping them with these kind of deployment modular sheets, and also weekly cycles that we maintain. This week we'll have an orientation, this week we'll have a mid-course correction, and so that their buy-in was constantly with us. So we had the teachers all the time working with us, and we call this program Ignite, the need to express what's in your heart and mind. That was the basic philosophy, was empathy, and to ignite the need to express what's in your heart and mind, both for the teachers, a safe haven for the students. And that's how our journey has been so far. Thank you.
All right. So thanks, Rajni. And yeah, so thank you so much for sharing these ideas. And I think especially the book, You Are the Little Unicorn. I think that was a very, very interesting idea amongst the other interesting ideas. So thank you so much for sharing those ideas. And with this, I would like to invite our third speaker for the afternoon. That is a very young Sarah. She is, leading Trident Foundation at a very young age. Very excited to listen to her views on this topic as well. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Chirag. Thank you for the kind words as well. Before I get right on the topic of education, I'm going to give a little brief about Trident Foundation, what it is. So Trident Foundation basically focuses on 5 major sectors, that is healthcare, environment and energy, women empowerment, livelihood, and of course, education and skill development. I'm not going to touch base with majority of the others, so I'm going to focus majorly on education and skill development part. Now, during these COVID times, we basically understood the assignment that we had to do something for people, and we had to do something for youth and women majorly. That is a prime focus area. So during this time, we started a lot of skill development projects, which particularly catered to the population which had completed the basic education of 10th standard or 12th standard. So a lot of skill development projects were done for them, in which we provided them life skill trainings as well, human skills, soft skills, all these kind of trainings. But after doing this for a particular bit of time, we realized that we are not able to touch base with the bigger issue or the main people who need to be put in focus, which was the primary and middle school education. So while we were doing a huge bit for the senior level youth or the young youth, we were not doing anything for the young children. So that is when we decided to venture out and come up with various kinds of ideas. So one of that thing was that we did Dan Utsav. I'm sure many of you must have heard of Dan Utsav, and we spent 4,500 plus man hours in a month towards helping children learn, helping children study. We did recorded sessions which are still in use. We're still connected with students from all across the country. So we did sessions with children who were deaf and mute or otherwise differently abled. So we had a different set of trainers within our organization who helped our people get basics of sign language, and then using those, we were reading out stories to kids, giving them recorded sessions, which they're still using till date. So that is one of the things that we did during the COVID times for that particular duration. Now, when we're talking about the effect on education that the pandemic has had, so while Punjab has been one of the states to open their schools for all classes post the pandemic, the irregularities that have emerged due to COVID period cannot be neglected. So many of the CSR-based organizations work in the field of education, and very rightly so, especially during these times. So we have also been trying to increase the penetration of our outreach into the young school-going community. And we did a small battery of surveys, which were intended at two levels. The first level was students, and the second level was the teaching or the administration staff that you call it. So one of the major concerns that faces us that came out of this survey was that even while the restrictions might have gone up, the number of cases might have gone down, there is still something at the back of the minds of the parents that the children might or might not be safe in schools. So they particularly pay focus on the part whether the teachers are vaccinated or not. And sadly, only 33% of the teaching staff in Punjab particularly is fully vaccinated against COVID. So that poses problem number one in this particular scenario when we're trying to get students back. Then there is a lot of loss of education gap as has already been discovered. So we did a small survey. We did some tests as per the standards and the basic literacy level that is achieved into those. And children who left school back when they were in 3rd standard and they rejoined back when they were in 5th class, imagine. And we were giving them tests which was suited to their current classes. They were not able to perform. They were not able to perform to the level to which they must have, or they might, or they should have. The level of learning was still somewhere stuck between 3rd and 4th. So there was a certain gap which we already know, and now we have sufficient data in our hand right in front of our faces to prove it. Apart from this, a lot of the schools were closed. The school infra was completely given away, which is one of the things I'm very glad that Noble is also doing. School infrastructure is completely given away. We need to start turning schools into smart schools as well. So we also, in the survey, it was also found out that kids want more fun incentives to be given to them when it comes to attending school. What are fun incentives? They want sessions which are more than studies. They want playgrounds which are more than just open fields of grass. They want a lot of things which are more than the mundane education facility that is being provided. So that is some few of the things that came out of the survey. Then there were a lot of dropouts during this time. Why? Because talking from the perspective of government schools, there are two segments. There was a particular segment of migrant people who come here for work, people who are from below poverty lines, who are not able to have any sort of access to any kind of technology whatsoever. So these were the ones who were totally disconnected from education during this time. And these are the ones who have suffered the most. And there is no saying whether majority or 100% of them might come back to schools. And a lot of females also might face the same kind of issue. So disruptions to education system have already driven substantial losses and inequalities in learning, and all the efforts to promote remote instructions, of course, are appreciable, but they have been sort of a poor substitute for in-person learning, especially for very young children. Even more concerning, many children, particularly girls, may not return to school even when the schools reopen. So that is something we actually need to address, especially at the very, very rural level. So the basic mission is we need to enable all the children to return to school and to create a sustaining and a supportive environment which addresses their health and psychological well-being as well as their learning needs. So this can be done in 3 particular segments. There are 3 priorities that we focus on to ascertain this happening. Number 1 is that all the children and the youth, they get back to school and they receive learnings which are tailored to meet their specific health, psychological well-being, and any other kind of needs. The challenges that might come up are that the school closures have put children's learning, nutrition, mental health, and overall development at risk. It has also made screening more difficult. Some students are particularly at risk of not returning back to school. So we have to increase our penetration into the local network to motivate more people to come back to school. Second is that all children receive appropriate support to catch up on the lost learning. They will require remedial instructions to get back on track. We'll have to think of courses which are not just driven by their book education. We'll have to think of, the pandemic revealed a large divide that schools can play, education can play in addressing digital access and digital skills. So here the CSR agencies have to come forward and they have to support and design the implementation of large-scale remedial learnings. We have to think about launching open access, adaptable learning assessment tools. We have to think about supporting the design and implementation of digital transformation plans that include components on both infrastructure. And we also have to sort of inculcate in the staffs of these schools to use the infrastructure facilities that are being provided to them. It's very strange to see that many of the schools that we go in, they have some, once they have been back from pandemic, they've been trying to revamp their infrastructure. They have a lot of facilities available at their ends, but they're not able to properly utilize. Maybe there has been a certain trend that has set in during this pandemic. Everybody has become a little more laid back. The children are not that concerned. The teachers have also taken the concern from the teachers and has also taken a bit of a back seat. So during these issues also, we need to start utilizing the resources available at our end, especially in a state like Punjab, where the government is already doing quite a bit to ascertain that schools have the necessary infrastructure, the necessary staff. So what we need to do is motivate the children at the right level. Now comes the third part, which I've already briefed about. So teachers need to be prepared and supported to address learning losses and to incorporate digital technology into their teaching. So teachers are in an unprecedented situation where they must make up for losses, they must do it in a limited time crunch, and they have to teach the current year's curriculum as well. And they also have to protect their own health in school while being very careful about the health of the children. So these are the teachers who will need training, who will need coaching and many other kinds of supports to get this done. They will also need to be prioritized for vaccinations and post, of course, frontline personals and everything, and school closures. In addition to digital skills, teachers may also need support to adapt their pedagogy to deliver instructions remotely, as well as it should be a mix. We can also have self-paced sessions. The curriculums need to be revamped with an integrated mix of learning styles and techniques which help overcome the education gap at a much faster pace. So self-paced learning is one thing which can be introduced for the children, which means that they might have some courses which are designed in a manner which is more intriguing to them, which is more interesting to them. It is a bit of fun, like Tata is doing. Actually, it is wonderful. They're creating sort of enticing subsystems where children themselves feel that, okay, this is something interesting. This looks interesting. Maybe I want to test my hand, test the waters. So that is something that we actually need to do. We need to look into. So those are the various perspectives. We particularly believe that we will play a part in increasing the mobilization here, in supporting the infrastructure needs of the schools, and in providing vocational courses and evening classes. During the pandemic also, we have been diligently working towards providing evening courses upon the request of various people who were already working in our organization. We started running this evening school for children who had no other means to attend schools. During the COVID times, they did not have phones, they did not have tablets, they did not have laptops. but they did have time at their hand, and we had the facility to provide education them while being very cautious of the COVID protocols. So that's what we did. And currently we are revamping it into to bring these kids back to school essentially and supporting the school infrastructure in doing so. So it is very correct that we all have to play a part, and all of the CSR agencies, they have to start thinking particularly from education perspective. Out of all the things that are running in the world, education is one of the primary concerns, that it is very, very important for a developing nation and even for a developed nation. So that is all that we have been doing, and there's many more things in plan which will be acting out. So over to you, Chirag.
Yes, Sarah, you absolutely bang on. I think education has to be the primary focus, especially now post-pandemic. I mean, we need to really have all our energies focused on getting education back on track. So I think very well articulated. And also, I think very interesting set of initiatives and suggestions that you kind of highlighted, which can help get education back to normal. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing these interesting ideas. I would like to now, move on to Prasoon sir and ask for, his views very quickly before we get into the question answer discussion with all the panelists. Prasoon sir, if you could share your views.
Yeah, thank you, Chirag. So one thing which I'd like to ask all the panelists is, how is ACER report different from post-pandemic observation that we are making on learning? So I think we all know about ACER, na? The report which Pratham presents about learning. So how it is different? Are we trying to say a different story from what ACER has been doing over the last 16 years? Second is, to all the panelists again, why do we think that employee volunteerism will make any difference? And why is it internal to organization or whether it's helping school? We need to look at it. And also, while the kind of activities we have been talking about, how many children we can say with confidence that they can learn, they can read and understand and respond to questions independently? No, we have been struggling in our own school where given text, children are not able to understand, they're not able to respond. So basically they are lacking independent learning abilities. Second is, do we have some indicator where we can say that when we are talking of education as empowering, when does it disempower students? So because the way we teach children, it is very, very disempowering rather than empowering. We want them to listen to what we are saying as a teacher, not open to what they are asking. So 4 important observations that I like the panelists to respond. Yeah, Chirag, thank you very much.
Yes, so I think interesting questions, Prasoon sir, and actually having a very different perspective to things is what you're also. We should look at things from both elements, both sides. So yeah, while we are looking at these specific challenges, we need to look at specific contributions coming in from various spaces as well, and all contributions are welcome. So because it's the crisis that we have in front of us is massive. It's not being talked about at such a big scale, but it is a massive crisis wherein we have like a huge population, we have a huge demographic advantage as a nation, and pandemic has hit us really hard in terms of educational levels. And if we can really create a solution to this crisis, to this learning loss that has happened, and bridge the gap, I think we there's a massive opportunity that we unfold for ourselves as a nation. So and then in this, every contribution coming for transformation of schools, contribution coming towards different directions, all contributions are definitely welcome. So your thoughts, Madhura?
Yeah, so just to reiterate what you said, like I said, 18 months and the lifespan is not too much, but for a young country like ours, where this will matter, especially for the communities which live on the margins, and where you need to start contributing to your family's, well-being, at a very young age. One is, how do you ensure that how do you undo what it's difficult to undo what has been done. Accessibility is again a huge issue or a challenge. So like, how do you just keep the schools going, and keep supporting till we are going to be ensuring that there is going to be some, and I personally think we should not get too stressed with the fact that, a third standard, fifth standard, they left school when they were in third standard, now they're in fifth standard, and they're not able to write as much or read as much as a fifth grader. I'll give you a personal example, of a parent. Like, I'm a mother of two children, and each child is so uniquely different. My son, completely, because he's an introvert, he loves, the online school. My daughter is an extrovert, and she really struggled. And, being a mother at home working, she still is, and she's much younger. She's like in fifth grade, and she is still struggling with, her writing speed or whatever. And it is going to happen. It is going to happen. But the more we stress about this data and lagging behind, the only thing we need to focus about is that there should be no dropouts. How we are able to cater to the kids to learn what's in the mainstream, not overwhelm them with the kind of inputs that they would want to run away from the, or bombard them with the fact that yes, they are not probably up to the mark, where they should be. And how do we ensure that they start coming on a very regular basis, right? A deep amount of lethargy seeps in everybody. It's human nature. I have been to office for the first time in many months, and believe me, I was literally not too happy or too confused. So much happened for an adult who's so much in the know of things, where probably the children just had an escape from school. How do you create that place where they actually start coming at a regular basis? How do you ensure that the teachers have already been through some kind of fortunately, we must also look at the divide between the urban and the rural. I think the rural has had a little bit of a more safety nets, but in urban, how much of trauma have the teachers and the staff and the have also been through? So what kind of support systems can be also created so that they have also supported in a very positive way? So I think at my end, I think this kind of focus, if it is kept for the moment, and I think the biggest lesson I learned as an individual, because if you can see, I talk very fast, I think very fast. So being fast is my bane, actually. It taught me a tremendous amount of patience, and the fact that it is actually, we use a very beautiful word in our cultures called Sthita Prajna, that you come to a point where it's not in your control, and how do you just then achieve that sense of just being in the present, right? So I know it's going to be quite overwhelming when the school start, everything comes at one go. But I think biggest lessons have been to just let go of all the kind of stress and tension, because some things are not in your control. So we need to understand what's in our control, or how we need to work together as a community. So for example, if the block level discussions happening, and some of the officers are really, I would say, are a blessing, to be honest. In these times, leadership actually has emerged. You've been able to see who actually can lead up front or whatever. So if there are block level discussions happening, there are proper requirements that are coming in through formal channels, as to what needs to be done. I think we must get into those spaces, and we must give that kind of a respect, where the government, the non-government, the school, the individual units have such, simple, humble requirements. It's actually very humbling. You won't believe, what kind of requirements come from these kinds of schools, that the teachers, if they're genuine and if they're hardworking, they would know that, that this is what we require to go or move ahead for the next coming months. And we need to listen to that very carefully, and keep that kind of a connect going. Our biggest learnings when we have had our employees connecting was also a lot of, what do we say, character building, for our own employees who contributed at the time, to understand. See, there is the urban-rural divide. There's always a very strong, under gap that you need to work on. So it's also been an enhancing experience for the employees to then give that time and be a little more patient, give those learning lessons, talk to the communities, spend some hours, play those games, the schools that have opened up, and ensure that, give, they are also proper feedback for us, whether things are happening, and then we can progress to the next step, of, giving or whatever can be done by that particular school.
Got it. So I have another question, and I think I'll ask I'll ask this to Rajni. What are the specific CSR initiatives that have delivered result during the pandemic times, which can now also be extended even during the non-COVID times to support students deliver on better education?
So one thing we are going to continue is our cycles of workshop with the teachers. That is something we realized is very critical, and it's been very successful, because once the teachers are empowered and they ignite this thing about empowering the student, this is working well for us. These periodic cycles of communication and workshops with the teachers.
All right. And maybe this question, maybe I can ask this to Prasoon sir. So, Prasoon sir, what are the specific, if you were to kind of identify like 5 top priority things that we should focus on, what would be the 5 things that we should focus on to mitigate the challenge or the crisis that there is? Just like pointed, these are the 4 or 5 things that you would suggest or propose. Yes, there's a big challenge. Yes, a lot of things are not going right. But what is it that we can do? The top 5 things that we must look at.
Yeah, so I don't know about 4 or 5 things, but one and the rest is detail of one important thing is, how do you make a child an independent learner of the grade she comes from? If she is from grade 3, she should be able to read and understand grade 3 text and also do grade 3 maths, apart from rote learning and memorization. So that will, it will save many things. We could have improved our intervention during the post-COVID time, particularly when I'm talking of my own school in Vidya Bhavan. If a child was able to independently read, write, and understand, we would have improved our learning inputs by more than 50%. It was a struggle for us to give children a text to read and respond to it, because we are not in the habit of letting children read independently and respond to questions. When they're in the school, we try to read text for them, make them understand the text and also the question. It's also true for mathematics. How do we make that? So that is the basic question, and the rest is detail. So you have to give them lots of opportunity to go beyond textbook, to read, write, and summarize, to do mathematics, talk about mathematics. Mathematics is not about only doing, it's about talking mathematics. The idea of mathematics, what are the, how do you put mathematical ideas into a question and into a solution, and how do you defend that? Also about when you are talking of science, about rational thinking, give them opportunity to understand the causation, not rote learn them or try to give them. So basically, one thing which Chirag I want to emphasize is, let us make effort to, and see, it's a big struggle, because the teachers training in service program also, they don't teach teachers the subject. It is more about pedagogy, about how to teach. It is not about understanding the content, understanding the subject. So that's the reason why National Education Policy has come with 4-year program that will also take the responsibility of teaching content to teachers. That's hugely missing in this country. And so the the other is basically extension of one important thing is that we should make all effort to create an independent reading, writing, comprehension ability in the child. So that's what that's my response, Chirag. Sorry, it's, I am not able to elaborate in 4 or 5 points. So.
No, but I get your point. So that's the core goal, and then we can have several different many initiatives taken to get to that goal. My next question is to Sarah. She's doing a lot of work with the community, so maybe she can highlight on what measures do you think, Sarah, can be taken at the community level, which will instill confidence amongst parents about their children's safety, so that they're willing to send their children to school, and what measures can be taken at the school level again to kind of ensure that we do not have an eventuality thereby.
So as I said previously also, Chirag, I think the first thing that we need to address is the issue of vaccination. We need to have all the teachers being vaccinated, because that will pose an imminent threat in the minds of parents all the time. They will always in the back of their mind assume that the children might or might not be safe. Of course, they have the doubt from each other. Children, young children practicing social distancing, masking up properly is not a very easy task. And to add on to the mix, to have teachers also not vaccinated, so that is one step. Second is, I think at the school level, we need to revamp our styles a bit. The learners have been away from the standard sessions, the standard classrooms for long, and they have learned new ways of learning, even though they might not have learned it with that much of proficiency, but they're learning new ways to learn. That is also a thing, learning new ways to learn. So now we need to incorporate some of this. Self-paced courses are, of course, a great thing. We can always have sessions which are more practical in nature. We have to we already tried to abandon our thought process of having classroom sessions which are driven from one end when we came up with a new education policy. So I think that is something that we need to dive deep into, make it more interesting for the kids. Now they know that they have the option. Nobody's forcing them to enter school, so let's give them some incentive to come back into it. Make learning interesting. It can always be made interesting. You can have more virtual sessions, you have smart classes nowadays, you can have activities driven from there, you can have informational videos, you can have movies with them, you can bring in the community here. People from organizations like ours, they can go and conduct sessions for the kids as well, so that they actually feel like coming to school. They feel some incentive in coming to school. And we also have to inculcate the spirit that children feel safe with each other also. Community learning is one thing that is very important when it comes to young children. If they feel the level of connect with the teachers also and with their subpar other students also, that is when we will be actually able to make an impact, is what I believe.
Got it, Sarah. So, last 6 minutes left. I would like to come to each one of you for a minute and a half each, or max 2 minutes, and get your inputs on, your concluding remarks on what you think is the way forward, and what are the specific steps that you are planning to take to mitigate this challenge. I would again like to start with Madhura first. Madhura, if you can just, very quickly, if you can give a wrap up of what your plan is.
Fortunately or unfortunately, because of the COVID times, we put in a large emphasis on education. Like I said, one is it came also as a need from our employees, but then we've also ensured that we're able to park, our funding for CSR and commitments from the last year, this year, and of course a couple of years ahead. So that commitment is strengthened because one is how would you, like I said in the beginning of it, how would you like to mitigate this in the future? If you see from the point of view of disasters also, apart from, of course, this was a pandemic, this is once in a century kind of a scenario, and I hope we don't get to witness such kinds again. But we are anyway prone to disasters. We've had one disaster after the other every year, and we also work on disaster management. So how do you mitigate these kinds of disasters? Is by keeping this very much as a live topic in your discussions, in your strategy, in your funding scenario, which you're trying to make a small commitment as CSR partners. again, with the community that we are working in, we are investing in with the multiple partners that we are working with. We're also preparing, like I said, like we said, we requested the partners to prepare a COVID preparedness plan. There's a proper manual for the schools which we are, again, which we're opening up. How do you train the communities? How do you train the partners once the schools are reopened? What's the pandemic? How do you teach? How do you train? And in a scenario, probable scenario like this, how do you ensure that you are still going to ensure to start creating more and more accessibility for digital platforms for the schools? So like I said, a simple thing for us to change our policies to donate our laptops. So IT and all companies have huge amount of these kinds of assets. We don't, because we are not an IT based or an investment company, but still we have to tweak in our policies. We did that. We had to take an intervention from the legal, and we have now decided that instead of actually disposing these off to these recyclers, because they're very good equipments, and I think that's one of the things which enable or platforms like you all can work upon, taking on the responsibilities to take on these assets because of the, like I said, the policies, and then ensure that once they're revamped or given with the new software, they're given to the communities, and there is a digital connect. You should actually track through data. What is the increase in the digital connect with the communities, because going forward, the online learning was even a completely a no-go for even people for us. But today, whether it's Harvard or whether it's your a lot of these kinds of people are offering now courses, regular courses, graduate, undergraduate courses online, and now they're a preferred model and they're accepted. So that kind of shift has happened where learnings are concerned at our level, and we need to ensure that this digital divide or the accessibility should also remain as a focus, and it should be narrowed through continuous efforts, right? So, and I think it's a very, very good platform, and there we have just made some observations. Like I said, these are not learnings yet because we've not gone into the impact assessment at the moment. But when the access was given to the needy, deserving students who could benefit out of it, have done wonders through with their learnings, with their mainframe learning. So we don't need to really, and I would make a humble request for all those content creators over here in education space. We really don't need to do a lot of innovation over there. There's a lot of content available for at least pre-primary, primary, and secondary education. I'm not talking about vocational or skills or whatever, but the mainframe kind of a thing is available. Many books are available online, but the access to a teacher or when there is going to be no classroom or this kind of a situation can be created through your smartphones or through the equipments. That I think a focus should happen. Priorities, like I said, should be there for education and ensuring that when the school children are coming back, it may take longer for them to graduate from the 10th or 12th or whatever it is, but they should not drop out. Is what I would want to say. A focus should be that there should be most of these organizations are already working on it, but the dropping out is a very easy possibility, is an easy choice. That should not happen, and that's how, if the sustenance of it to coming back and not overwhelming and yet continuing the support is taken on a priority by the corporates, like we are also trying to do at our own level, I think should work for us.
Great. So health of students going digital and ensuring that there are no dropouts is what I gathered, Mathura, and obviously amongst a lot of other relevant details. So, and I would like to quickly get Rajni. I think we'll be overshooting by a couple of minutes, but these are really,
Hi.
yeah.
I
Rajni,
think empathy is how I see as a CSR person is the way forward. Like Prasun said, teachers come from middle class family. We are 33 locations, very remote. Quite a few of them are tribals, remote schools. So I think empathy is the way forward. Corrective fun assessment. I think this is how I like to work in this space, and that's critical. Thanks.
got it, Rajni. So empathy and fun assessment is what you're suggesting as the way forward. Sarah, if you would like to sum up your
I
understanding.
agree with a lot of points that are made by Rajni, to be very honest. Even the ones that she wrote in the chat, they were all very valid points. I believe that we just need to revamp the deliverance methodology of ours. As Prasun is saying, subjects are not boring, subject matters are not boring. The deliverance can be boring in some instances. So if we make the change that people need to experience the learning and not just gobble it whole, that would be a difference. And I think what role we can play is that we can set up vocational courses, we can have a regular interaction with the students, and I think it helps them also at some point of time. Having regularly having some people come up, conduct activities with them, trying to teach cognitive abilities, develop cognitive abilities into them by the means of exercises which are entertaining as well as educating is what makes it more interesting. So I think that is something that we need to do. Engagement is the one thing that we need to increase here, I think.
Got it. So revamping deliverance methodology and essentially enhancing engagement is what you're proposing. And Prasun sir, if you could summarize. Also, there's one important question which has come in, and I thought I'll just shoot it to you in the very end. So how do you, I mean, obviously there's a lot of focus on education. How do you create the right balance between curricular and extracurricular? And I'm sure you would think that what is the difference between curricular and extracurricular course. So, however, in normal understanding, this is how people understand curricular, extracurricular. So, how we derive the right balance in these times? And Akshay has been asking this question in the chat. So,
Yeah. So, Chirag, we need to understand all the words we are using. I'll not, if we are saying activity-based learning, what does that stand for? If we are saying fun learning, what that it stands for? These are all abstract nouns. It's like saying that, India will become a good country. Deprived of, nobody is talking about poverty, nobody is talking of unemployment, nobody is talking about disrespect to different religion. So we are talking of a good country. We are talking of somebody who's a patriot, is not somebody who is working for generating resources or generating economics in the country. So these are all abstract words. We need to define it properly before we make it as a point of when we are trying to make others understand what we are talking about. So that we have to get rid of these abstract nouns. So, and that will make get us closer to what we want to do. So right now, education since 1991, ever since the learning improvement program started, it has become full of jargons. And so for example, a fun for me may be different from a fun from you. What you understand, what you will take as a fun, what you will take as an activity based, I may have a different view of an activity based. So we have to clear this definition in education about all this idea. So that's what I'm talking from. Being a participant across all the 5 webinars now. So this is what I want to sum up.
Yeah. I think very interesting points that we've highlighted. So while we are using all these terms and all these things are being ideated, we need to really see, their impact and whether we are really understanding these activities correctly. So with that said, I have a small announcement to make. It's a small celebration. We, as an organization, have been incubated very recently with IIM Bangalore, and we'll be working with them on the scale up. So, it will be a 1-year engagement wherein we'll be scaling across different parts of India. And it's a very, very interesting opportunity because infrastructure, quality education, sustainability, and very different level of challenge that they're helping us solve. So very interesting prospect for the entire team to be collaborating with that team as well. And with that said, I would like to thank all the panelists and all the participants for being on this webinar. Very, very interesting and exciting discussion. Very, very interesting ideas shared by almost all the panelists. I think the idea that we have schools being transformed on the borders of our country is just a sensational idea that Madhura shared. It stays with me, and obviously amongst all the other very critical ideas as to how we can have the revamp deliverance methodology, and how we can have really students and the community and everybody engaged, and how we can really look at not just putting up jargons, but really delivering what needs to be delivered on ground. So thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this session. We look forward to having this session again next month. Thank you, and bye-bye. Thanks, Madhura. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Rajini. Thanks, Prasun sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chirag.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a great day.